The rain-slicked streets of New York City gleamed under the neon glow. But my heart was a storm no umbrella could shield. I stood outside the towering glass office of Sterling Enterprises, clutching a contract that would bind me to a man I barely knew. This was no love story, it was a deal. And I was about to sign my life away. My name is Eli Carter, a 28-year-old graphic designer scraping by in Brooklyn, where dreams often drowned in the rent. I wasn't supposed to be here, staring up at the penthouse office of Julian Sterling, the 32-year-old CEO whose name was synonymous with power and icy charisma. But desperation has a way of rewriting your story. My mother's medical bills were piling up, and my freelance gigs couldn't keep up. When a cryptic email arrived offering a mutually beneficial arrangement, I thought it was a scam. Then I saw the dollar amount, enough to clear the debt and breathe again. All I had to do was marry Julian Sterling in paper. For 1 year. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt like ascending into another world. Julian's office was all sleek lines and cold glass, a reflection of the man himself. He stood by the window, his tailored suit hugging a frame that screamed discipline. His blue eyes flicked over me, assessing, as if I were a stock he wasn't sure he wanted to invest in. Eli, is it? His voice was smooth, like whiskey over ice. You understand the terms. We marry. You get your money. And in 12 months, we part ways. No strings. I nodded, my throat tight. Why me? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Julian's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. You're unremarkable, he said bluntly. No connections. No scandals. You're safe. The word stung, but I signed the contract anyway. What did I care if I was a placeholder in his perfect life? I needed the money. And he needed a shield, though, from what? He didn't say. The wedding was a quiet affair at City Hall. Just us and a bored officiant. Julian's hand brushed mine as we exchanged rings. And I hated how my pulse jumped. He was beautiful. Yes, but cold as the marble floors of his penthouse. We moved into his Upper East Side apartment, a sprawling space that felt more like a museum than a home. Separate bedrooms. Separate lives. I was a guest in his world, a prop in his carefully curated image. But cracks started to show. Late at night, I'd catch Julian staring out at the city, his guard down, his face softened by something like loneliness. He'd ask me about my day, my art, my dreams, and I'd answer, hesitant at first, then eagerly. We'd talk over coffee in the mornings, his sharp wit surprising me, drawing me in. Once, when I laughed at one of his dry jokes, his eyes lingered on me, warm and searching, before he looked away. Then came the gala. Sterling Enterprises was hosting a charity event, and Julian insisted I attend as his husband. I felt out of place in the borrowed tuxedo, surrounded by Manhattan's elite. Julian, though, was in his element, charming investors and deflecting questions about our marriage with practiced ease. But I noticed the way certain men polished, predatory hovered around him. A tech mogul named Victor Kane was the worst. His smile too sharp, his hand lingering too long on Julian's arm. I felt a strange twist in my chest. Not jealousy, surely not, but something fierce and protective. After the gala, in the quiet of our apartment, Julian poured us both a drink. You did well tonight, he said, his voice low. Victor's been chasing me for years. He backed off when he saw you. His words hit like a punch. Was that why he needed me? To fend off suitors. I forced a smile. But inside, I was reeling. I was a tool. A decoy. Nothing more. Days turned into weeks, and the lines between us blurred. Julian started leaving notes on the fridge, small things. Like, your sketches are on the table. Impressive. Or coffee's ready. Don't let it get cold. I found myself looking forward to our evenings. When we'd sit on the couch. Him with his reports. Me with my sketchpad. The silence comfortable. One night, after too much wine, I asked him why he avoided relationships. He stiffened, then said, "Love complicates things. I don't have time for complications." But his eyes, when they met mine, told a different story. I started to notice the way he'd brush past me in the kitchen, his touch lingering just a second too long. The way he'd smile, rare, but real, when I teased him about his terrible taste in music. I was falling, and I hated it. This was a contract, not a romance. But my heart didn't care about the fine print. Then came the bombshell. I was tidying his office, something I rarely did, when I found a file labeled Carter. Inside was a dossier on me, my financial records, my mother's hospital bills, even my old college transcripts. It was thorough, clinical, like I was a business acquisition. Tucked in the back was an email exchange between Julian and his lawyer. "Eli's perfect," Julian had written. "Uncomplicated. No ties. He'll keep the vultures at bay." The words burned. I was a pawn, chosen because I was nobody, because I wouldn't matter. I confronted him that night, the file trembling in my hands. "Is this all I am to you?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "A scarecrow for your suitors." Julian's face paled, his usual composure gone. "Eli, it's not," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't lie to me. I trusted you." I stormed out, the city lights blurring through my tears. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that apartment. In that lie, I ended up at a dive bar in Brooklyn, nursing a cheap beer and my wounded pride. The city pulsed around me, indifferent to the ache in my chest. I'd let myself believe there was something real between us, but Julian had played me from the start. My phone buzzed with his text, short. "Urgent, where are you?" "Eli, please come back." I ignored them, but each one chipped away at my resolve. Around midnight, I stumbled back to my old apartment, the one I hadn't given up despite Julian's money. It was cramped, cluttered with half-finished canvases, but it was mine. I collapsed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let myself fall for a man who saw me as a means to an end. The next morning, Julian was at my door. He looked wrecked, his tie loose, his hair mussed. "You didn't answer," he said, his voice raw. I was worried. I wanted to slam the door, but something in his eyes, fear, maybe, stopped me. "Why do you care?" I snapped. "I'm just your shield. Right. To keep guys like Victor away." He flinched, stepping inside without invitation. "It started that way," he admitted, his voice low. "I needed someone to stop the rumors, the pressure. My board, my investors, they want stability, not a bachelor with a revolving door of suitors." "But Eli," he hesitated, his hands clenching. "You're not just that. Not anymore." I laughed, bitter. "Don't." I saw the file. "Julian, You vetted me like a business deal. He ran a hand through his hair. Pacing. I had to be sure. He said. I've been burned before. Trust doesn't come easy. He stopped, his eyes locking onto mine. But I trust you now. And I feel something. For you. My heart stuttered, but I wasn't ready to believe him. Prove it, I said, crossing my arms. Because words don't mean anything. He nodded, like he'd expected the challenge. Give me time, he said. I'll show you. Over the next few weeks, Julian did exactly that. He showed up at my apartment with takeout, sitting on my ratty couch as we talked about everything me childhood in Ohio, his pressure cooker life in Manhattan. He took me to an art gallery, not one of his fancy events, but a small, quirky one in Williamsburg, where he listened as I rambled about brushstrokes and color theory. He was trying, and it was breaking down my walls. One night, as we walked along the Hudson, the city lights reflecting on the water, he stopped. I'm not good at this, he said, his voice soft. Feelings. Vulnerability. But you make me want to try. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm against mine, and I didn't pull away. We stood there, the world fading, and for the first time, I felt like we were more than a contract. But the past wasn't done with us. Victor Kane reappeared, cornering me at a coffee shop while Julian was at a meeting. You're a cute distraction, he said, his smile venomous. But Julian's playing you. He's done this before, fake relationships to keep people like me at arm's length. My stomach dropped. You're lying, I said, but doubt crept in. Victor smirked, sliding a business card across the table. Call me when you're ready to know the truth. I didn't tell Julian about Victor, but the encounter gnawed at me. Was I just the latest in a line of convenient partners? I started noticing things: Julian's guarded phone calls, the way he'd changed the subject when I asked about his past. My trust, so newly built, began to crack. Then came the dinner party. Julian had invited his closest friends, a small group of people who seemed to genuinely care about him. I was nervous, but they welcomed me, asking about my art, laughing at my jokes. Julian watched me from across the room, his expression soft, almost proud. After dinner, as we washed dishes together, he leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. You fit here, he said. With me. My heart swelled, but Victor's words echoed in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I slipped into Julian's office, searching for answers. In a locked drawer, I found another file, not about me, but about someone named Ryan. Photos, letters, a history of another arrangement that ended in heartbreak. My hands shook as I read. Julian had done this before. I was just another Ryan, another tool. I confronted him at dawn, the file in my hands. Who's Ryan? I demanded. Julian's face crumpled, like I'd struck him. Eli, please, he said, but I was already backing away. You lied to me. Again. I grabbed my coat, my vision blurring with tears. I'm done. I moved back to my apartment, cutting contact with Julian. The city felt colder without him, but I couldn't stay in a lie. My mother's bills were paid, my end of the deal fulfilled. I tried to focus on my art, but every sketch turned into his face, those blue eyes, that rare smile. I hated how much I missed him. A week later, Julian showed up at my door, soaked from the rain, holding a box of my sketches he'd kept. "I'm not here to ask you back," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his eyes. "I just need you to know the truth." He handed me the box, then a letter, sealed and worn. "Read it. Then decide what you believe." The letter was from Ryan, dated 3 years ago. It wasn't what I expected. Ryan wrote about falling for Julian, about their fake marriage turning real, but how he'd left because he couldn't handle Julian's world, the pressure, the scrutiny. "You loved me," Ryan wrote, "but I wasn't strong enough to stay." There was no betrayal, no manipulation, just two people who couldn't make it work. I looked at Julian, standing in my doorway, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "I should have told you about Ryan," he said, "but I was scared. You weren't just a shield, Eli. You never were. I picked you because you were safe. Yes, but I fell for you because you're your passion, your honesty, the way you see the world." He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "I love you, and I'm sorry I made you doubt that." I wanted to push him away, to protect myself, but his words cracked something open in me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because I'm a coward," he said simply. "I thought if I kept you at arm's length, I wouldn't get hurt again. But I'm hurting now, Eli. Because you're gone." We stood there, the rain drumming outside, the space between us heavy with everything unsaid. I thought about the nights we'd laughed together, the way he'd held my hand by the river, the man he was when no one was watching. He wasn't perfect, but neither was I. And maybe that was enough. I stepped forward, closing the distance, and kissed him. It was slow, tentative, then desperate, like we were making up for lost time. When we pulled apart, his eyes were bright with hope. "Stay?" he whispered. "Not for the contract. For us." We rebuilt from there, piece by piece. Julian opened up about his past, his fears, the weight of his name. I showed him my world, messy, colorful, real. We fought. We laughed. We learned each other. The contract ended, but we didn't. We got married again, this time for real, in a small ceremony with my mom and his friends, under a sky that felt like it was ours. Looking back, I think about how we started strangers bound by a deal, each guarding our hearts. But love has a way of rewriting the terms. It's not perfect, but it's ours, and that's worth everything. As we stood on our rooftop, the city sprawling below, Julian took my hand, his ring catching the light. "You're home," he said, and I knew he meant it.